Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Okay, today we're responding to a listener question. So I received an email, and thank you, listener, for really sending this email because I always say all the time, please, if you want us to talk about something, let me know. And someone did reach out. So thank you, thank you. All right. The question is, I know many married people who have been together for years and they have become roommates, including herself in her marriage. She just no longer attracted to her husband and is struggling with attraction. And so they're not having sex. And the question is, what are the reasons? What is going on with me? What do you think is happening with my relationship? And what can be done about it? So this is going to be a two-parter. We're going to talk in this episode about what are some of the reasons that this happens. And I love this question. And I wanted to talk about it today because this is one I hear about quite a bit over the years in my practice too. So I think that this is more common than people realize. And I think that's something that we just don't really talk about. Men and women don't talk about this so much with their friends. Yeah, right.
No, I mean, you in your world hear about it, but I don't think
In the privacy of my office,
right.
clients will talk to me about it, but
It's a private topic, right? So it's not something people want to broadcast. I don't think so.
well, when I was in my 20s and in my 30s, I remember more my 20s with friends and with like my female colleagues and coworkers, people would talk about their sex lives a little bit. They would. And I remember these conversations. And I remember thinking sometimes, oh, you're like, I had a colleague, it wasn't nice because she was critical of her boyfriend. And I used to think to myself, there's such a boundary violation. You are disrespecting him. I don't want to know this about him.
Yeah,
So I thought there was a lot of snarkiness and laughter around it after work, having a drink at happy hour. I did hear these conversations. But as we got older in our 30s and 40s, married, maybe weighed down by jobs, very busy, now children and running around carpool, people don't talk about this, right? Like
no,
no one talks about their sex life and appropriately so. That was in a disrespectful manner at times in my past. But now I think people just don't have time for it and don't talk about it.
yeah. And I mean, isn't it safe to say, like, so the group you're talking about, were they all women that
Yeah,
were
they're
having
all
these
women. Yeah, yeah.
conversation at your work, right? That's what you're saying.
Work, and I had a friend group and it would come
Yeah,
up. Yeah.
yeah. Because I mean, I'm trying to envision a bunch of dudes sitting around. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't ever happen.
I think maybe in some groups, guys who talk about it.
I don't
It's
know.
probably in a vulgar way. You didn't hang around with guys like that, but I could
Maybe.
see it being talked about in a vulgar way and maybe just a little disrespectful towards
Probably more of
women.
a disrespectful
Yeah,
conversation, which
yeah.
is
You know
unfortunate.
that. We
Yeah,
see a lot of bros who do that.
yeah, yeah. Maybe so.
Yeah. Okay. So good question. And let's get started. What is the number one reason why you think people stop having sex is they've been together for a long time?
I think the obvious one is just the physical changes in people's bodies. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the shallow answer, but I think that's probably
And it's true.
the true answer. I think also maybe just over time, you start to just kind of grow separately, maybe in certain interests in both worlds, and maybe there's not as much intersection,
Oh, yeah.
with
Yeah.
each other
Different
on.
interests, different
Yeah,
hobbies.
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that plays into it also, and I think maybe just weariness. I mean, just as you get
Yes.
older, like
That's legit.
you work a lot, you're tired, you come home, you're just tired. And it's like, okay, it's not front of mind maybe as much as it
Yeah.
was earlier.
So let's go back to the first one you said. I think it's being together a long time. I think it's loss of novelty. The novelty has worn off and it always will wear off in a long term relationship. But you remember those first weeks, months, maybe years where it was still so fun and exciting and you looked forward to it. And it was just, pure pleasure with each other. As the years go by, that will go down and you add in babies, pregnancy, babies, children. You're going to move out of the fact that this is, just so much fun. I think that, yeah, I mean, it's the novelty has worn off. And then you got to move into what's next. So how can we find attraction and pleasure in our relationship. I don't even think for most couples they don't have pleasure, because once they get into it, they can experience pleasure. I think it's taking the time to have sex. That's what's plaguing many, many couples. To your point about the busyness and the weariness.
Yeah. Like trying to figure out when to make it happen.
I mean,
You're just so weary and like your days are long, I'm guessing. Like it's like,
and let's talk about the differences between males and females. I
Oh.
think you could probably almost always have sex. And I can't, but don't want to. It's not in my mind. I'm not thinking about it. It's like, oh God. And so this is what I hear from women and, my friends from time to time have, now that I'm talking out loud about it, they have joked about like, I'd rather go to sleep. I mean, sex or sleep, I'd rather go to bed. I'd rather have sleep and read a good book, and that's it.
yeah.
Like, bye. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
going to get in my comfy bed and fall asleep.
Yeah.
You have nothing to say to that.
I have nothing to say to that. No. Well, I mean, are we really talking about you and I at this point? Or is that where we're going with this? Or are we talking just in generalities?
We can talk about you and
I mean, I can go either direction with
talk about
this.
that.
100%.
Tim's getting uncomfortable.
Not at all.
Tim's getting uncomfortable.
I just want to make sure we understand the parameters of the conversation at this point. So
this is our podcast, and I think it's refreshing for people to hear us talking about how we live, and we're not perfect and we don't do it perfectly, and it's real. I'm a therapist and I go through this stuff too, and a life coach, you all know.
Yeah.
But I go through this too. We go through this too. I think that we've had to really work on it, and we work on it do you notice that we work on it? Okay, I'll speak for myself. I have worked on it at certain times in my life more than I have at other times with you. There are times that I've made an effort. There are times I'm like, no, I'm not making an effort. I don't want to. And we're busy, and you're really good because you don't really air quote, bug me to have sex. You don't bug me.
Don't mean to bug you.
Yeah. Well, there are husbands and partners who do bug the woman.
Yeah.
And that's like, get off me. I don't want to. And I think that for me, what was a big part of that, which we're going to get into, another reason why this happens, is hormonal changes in the perimenopausal years. That's legit. That has been a massive change. Now I have since worked on it, and I'm on hormones, and I've gotten myself back to how I felt really when I was like in my 30s. But perimenopause really did a number on me. One of the ways there's many, many ways it did a number on me, but one of them that was big was total lack of interest in sex and loss of libido and physical changes in my body. I didn't want you to touch me, and I had no interest in it. And I'm like, ugh, please. If I could take that out of my life, if I could take sex out of my life, I'd be very happy. And I knew, as a therapist, I knew that wasn't a mentally and emotionally healthy way to view my life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't emotionally and a mentally healthy way to be in a marriage. I knew that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like the generations ahead of us who, I don't know this, but I would think to myself, I wonder if they're still having sex.
I mean, but you don't dwell on that. Hopefully,
no,
it's
but I've heard older couples say to me, "Oh, they're my buddy now." Like, really? Or they're your buddy? Like, okay, that's so unsexy.
It's like saying it like they're your partner, but not in the modern day sense of.
Like, what are you, like 5 years? Yeah,
Yeah.
like, are you your buddy? Like
we're co-partners in life. Like we're just
like roommates.
Yeah.
Because people turn into roommates. And don't you have even a slight interest in having a sexual life as you get older? Maybe you're not having sex every week, but maybe it's something that's a part of your life.
Yeah.
It's so important, mentally healthy, to have a sex life.
Yeah.
It's good for your mental and emotional
we
health.
talked about the science behind it.
Yeah, cortisol
behind why you should.
Oxytocin.
That should be part of what you do and your experiences week to week, month to month, year to year.
How it helps stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's and the connection. It's a very unique connection that you have with your spouse that you don't have with anyone else. And if you don't have that, that's like a gaping hole.
I always tell couples, it's the glue that holds you together.
Yeah.
Because it is the glue, because you can go without it. But I notice that with you and I, it changes. You're different. You are different. You're sweeter, you're kinder, you're nicer, you're more patient with me, you're more tolerant. I think there's something
Well,
to
be careful. Like you're making it sound like I'm not that.
No,
When
you are. No, you really are. You are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I do notice a little bit of a change in you. And I
yeah,
think that within me too, because I think those feel good hormones, oxytocin, it's the same hormone that gets kicked in after you've given birth and had a baby.
yeah,
When you're holding that newborn and the mother is looking at that newborn, it's a firing of this wonderful pleasurable hormone of oxytocin. It's the same hormone that gets kicked in when you have had sex, you've had an orgasm. It's
yeah,
the same.
yeah,
And there's something that it does to you afterwards. It's calming. There's a contentment within. And I have to say this, it's not the same in its eye contact, it's sex with another human being live. It's not porn. And I have to say that. And we could do a whole other episode on it, but it's not porn. It's not masturbation. I'm talking about relational, sexual relations with your partner,
yeah.
someone you love. So for this episode, that's what we're talking about.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, it's
Because
very important.
I mean, that's the whole like psychological part of this conversation. Just thinking for myself, if I'm really busy with other things in my head, whether it's work or it's a side hustle or it's whatever, a relationship that needs mending, or I mean, there could be lots of
Right,
things,
right.
right? If that stuff is what's spinning in my head, like sometimes I'll allow that to spin a little bit too much. Like it will take way too much of my attention.
Space in your brain.
Yeah.
In a way you can't help it, in a way you don't think to think differently. That's the skill of, now this is from acceptance and commitment therapy. That's a skill, an act of what we call cognitive diffusion, where you take a minute to notice your thoughts. So I always tell my clients, it's like a thought bubble in the cartoons. Like take a cartoon character and you remember the thought bubbles. Take your thoughts and take it outside of you and just kind of notice it and put it into a thought bubble outside of your body. Like I'm noticing
Yeah.
that I'm really busy. I'm noticing that I'm not thinking that much about sex because I got this and I have this and I got that and I've been sick and I got to catch up. That's so important to notice that. And at the same time, think about, in this case, you're thinking about sexual relations, having sex with your wife, and wow, that hasn't happened in a while. Just notice what that might be about for you, the reasons why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not to judge it, just to notice it.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, you come to a place of like, okay, so now I want to make room. I want to make room this week for sex or this month for sex. And there's all that. So how do I fit it in?
Yeah. Because all of that is not going to necessarily disappear.
So-
There'll be some version of all of that
Right.
always.
Always.
Yeah.
Notice it,
Yeah,
acknowledge
yeah.
it without judgment,
Yeah.
and then take it back into yourself and say, all right, okay, how do I talk to Anna, or how do I talk to my husband or my wife, my partner, about making an effort to get this back into something that we engage in?
Right.
Whether
Because
it
if you
be-
think about it, so if you've got all of that stuff in your head and it's occupying your energy, and then it's the end of the evening, you're going to go to bed, but instead of anything else besides that occupying your space, you go to bed, what do? You get on your phone, you check that one last email.
well,
or
you know what I think. Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
allow that stuff to cross.
That's a terrible way to go to bed if you're checking your email. too.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying I do
Gosh,
that,
that's like never turning
but
off
I'm
your
just
work
saying
clock.
we're giving advice here. It's like you can allow that stuff to cross the border into your bedroom, and then everything else. If you're talking about any type of sex at night or like whatever, that stuff is out the window because
Absolutely.
you're totally engrossed in like something else.
Absolutely.
Right?
So we're going to get into that in the next episode of this.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're bringing up a really good point. And I want to talk more about that, but we're going to do a 2-parter, and that'll be in part 2. Okay.
It's important to me that the supplements I take are of the highest quality. And that's why for 5 years, I've been drinking AG1. Unlike many supplement brands, AG1 conducts relentless testing to set the standard for purity and potency. I know I can trust what's in every scoop of AG1 because it's tested for 950 contaminants and banned substances, while the industry standard typically only tests for 10. Taking care of my health shouldn't be complicated, and AG1 simplifies this by covering my nutritional basis and setting myself up for success in just 60 seconds. AG1's ingredients are heavily researched for efficacy and quality, and a love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. So if you want to replace your multivitamin and more, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/Anna. That's drinkag1.com/Anna. Check it out. You will not regret it.
Let's go back to some of the reasons. We just had a whole conversation around loss of novelty. That's true for all of us. The novelty is going to wear off. We talked about, which is my next point, was stress and life responsibilities. That's legit for all of us. That can come in and that can kick us in the butt. And what are the first things that come off the table in relationships when we have quite a bit of life stress? It's not work. It's not our kids. It's not the fact that we have to eat or we have to put clothes on or we have to shower. What are some of the first things that come off the table? It might be working out. It might be exercise. I think number one is sex. Sex can come off the table. Fitness comes off the table. Maybe good nutrition comes off the table. These are the things that we take off the table because you got to get the kids up. You got to pick them up from sports. You got to go to work. You got to get on your Zoom at 8:30. You got to be there, or you got to get in the car and drive. You have to respond to those emails at some point. You have to. Things that come off the table maybe also are relationships with your siblings or friends. Sex is up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So stress and life responsibilities, when you feel like you're barely treading water and you're about to sink, sex comes off.
Yeah.
This is a really big one. My next point about why this happens is unresolved emotional issues that couples have with each other. That is just going to snuff out any flame that you may have had with each other. If you've got issues with each other and you're not talking about them and you've stuffed them down, suppressed them inside of you, I mean, that's just going to kill any romance or attraction towards
And
one
I
another.
think we just talked about this particular topic recently, in the last, several episodes of getting resolution, because if you don't, and it carries over. And I think the comment one of us said was like, try and get that resolution, but in the same day, if you can, right? You don't want to go to bed in a spot where you're just like, ugh, like you're irritated. It will happen. I mean, that does happen. It's not impossible to not have those moments, but try your darndest to not have that happen. That's just so freeing, I think.
Yeah. If you and I, or we are resentful of one another, we've got unresolved issues, or we had a fight and it's not really resolved, that is just going to chip away. And you make love to a woman's mind before you make love to her body. I say this all the time.
Yeah.
And I think for women, I think for men, but I do think especially for women, like we talked about the sex earlier, men can have sex. Women, we got to work through that stuff before we're going to have sex with you. You have to make love to our minds. And that might be talking and talking and talking about an issue until it's resolved, or it's the intensity of it, the acuity of the issue has come down. If we feel unseen, unheard, unappreciated, not listened to, you can forget sex.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's,
it just is. It
and
just
that's
is.
been going on. I mean, that's not like a big
Since the beginning of time.
secret. I mean, that's how, yeah, exactly. Since the beginning of time, it's been going on. Mm-hmm. But you also have to, as a male, you have to not accept it, but like you have to get it. You have to understand that, right?
If we don't have emotional intimacy with you, it's going to affect our physical intimacy with you.
Right.
So start with the emotional intimacy, then you'll move into the physical intimacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because they're saying that to a male, and not all the time, not every time, but most of the time, that's the tough one for a male to do.
But why is it tough?
Well, just because, again, it's been going on since the beginning of time. It's
okay,
just, right?
But why?
It's not right. I'm not saying it's right, but it's fact. I mean, it just is. You have to work at it.
What do they say? Men think about sex. Men think about sex every, 7 minutes or something?
Something silly, yeah.
Well, when you're an adolescent boy and you're in your 20s, I'm sure.
Well,
does it change as the decades go by?
I mean,
nice look on your face. Wow.
I'm trying to do the math. So you're talking about 7 minutes, did you say?
That's what they say. I mean, there's no research behind that. I've just heard that a lot over the years. That doesn't come from anything.
Yeah.
I've just heard that. I've read it.
I mean, I don't know. I got to believe I'm up over at least 10 minutes now.
So at this point, you're 50s. You think about it every 10 minutes.
I don't know. I have no idea.
But you do think about it a lot.
I've never even thought about it.
You do think about sex a lot, don't you?
I do. Do I think
Tell
about it?
Tell the world on
yes.
this podcast.
Do I think about it?
Yes, I
do. I think about it a lot? I mean, what does that even mean?
So for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, but you're listening, Tim's face got really red right now. He just blushed.
Stop it.
Do you think about it throughout the day, Tim? I want to know. We've never talked about this.
Not normally.
Okay.
No. I
Okay.
mean, it's just like you're at work. I'm at work. I'm busy. I don't really.
Okay. You're not thinking about sex.
No.
In general.
No. I don't think there's time for that at work for me. I don't know.
My mind it comes into a man's mind. A male's mind.
I don't know. I mean, I'll pay more attention to it. I don't know, actually. I don't know. It's not like I'm dwelling on it. Certainly not, or I would be able to answer your question directly, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I've always heard.
7 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So if you want to have sex with the woman in your life, work on the emotional intimacy piece, then the physical intimacy will come. I'll say this again. You make love to a woman's mind before you make love to her body. Yeah. All right. Complacency and lack of effort. I mean, this is something that just happens in long-term marriages and partnerships. We just stop making an effort because everything we talked about in this entire episode today is we find other things that are of interest to us. Like me, many people would rather watch their series they're streaming on television. Many people would rather go read their good book. Many people would rather go knit. They'd rather do anything else that's of interest to them than having sex. I think that we just don't prioritize the relationship. We stop prioritizing the emotional intimacy of the relationship. We become like roommates and we just stop trying. That's a lot of what I hear.
Yeah. I don't know if this is part of it or if you have another one that this will be part of, but I think we will allow other things that could get in the way or would get in the way to get in the way. If it's not, the timing's not right, or someone's in the house, or you got an appointment, or it's like we allow those things to overcome the time that we could actually have sex. Like there are opportunities, but then we allow those other things to kind of like get in the way.
The hardest years for us was not when the kids were little. It was when they were in adolescence, in high school. My gosh. Because we have our bedroom is a revolving door. So someone's always walking in our room. Someone's like, Mom, can you button up this? Can I borrow a pair of the girls, especially? They were bad. But Grafton wasn't great either. Grafton come in and just lie in the bed. And I love that. I love that with the kids and the lack of boundaries and just wanting to be around us and wanting to come and talk at night. Of course, Grafton never would want to talk, but then at 10 o'clock at night comes and lies in the bed. Now he wants to have a whole on conversation about everything in his life that he's thinking about, how stressed he is about school and his girlfriend. And I'm like, really? Right now? You couldn't have done this at 4 o'clock this afternoon when I was driving you or getting dinner ready, but now you want to have this heart to heart? I'm like, you got to go. That has happened.
Sure.
And so the adolescent years were tough for us. Yeah?
Yeah. I mean,
when they were 6, it was just different. They didn't know what was going on if the door was locked. They're like, why is the door locked?
Yeah.
But when they're 18, they're like, yeah,
or
no,
they were
have
sleeping. I mean, it was like,
or sleep.
Yeah.
Well, they have been like, why is it? I think we did lock the door when they were in high school, and you could hear them retching behind the door, like, okay. They think we are the most disgusting people. Ew, and they actually would get mad at us.
Yeah.
2 of them got mad at our one daughter, who she did walk in on us. She wouldn't talk to us for 3 days. She would talk to us for days.
Oh.
Just give us a silent treatment. Just slamming doors. She was in high school, so she made every effort to not be in the house.
Yeah.
She was really, really pissed at us. So those are hard years, but hey, at least you and I were trying, right?
Yeah.
So it's complacency and lack of effort is a big reason why we become roommates with each other. If you are not going to continue to invest time and energy into connection, well, the attraction and the intimacy is going to fall off because attraction does fade, everyone. Attraction fades. We get older, and I'm going to get into it next. Our bodies change, and you're not going to be as attracted to each other if you are wonderful, and do know couples who are, but if you're not, and this is by and large the truth for most people, you're not as attracted to each other. You don't have that body of the 25, 30-year-old anymore. But if you can still have great sex life, but you got to make an effort to stay connected in an emotionally intimate way. And you have to find ways of still wanting to be with each other.
Yeah.
So it's lack of effort is a big one, right?
I think so.
We just put each other to the bottom of the list.
Which is so backwards. It should be opposite that, just in general. I mean, that's not our go-to, is to put the other one last or at the
It just
bottom of the
happens.
list.
It just
I think
happens.
but it does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, those are things we just need to work harder on, I suppose.
And the next one, which is huge, especially as for women, we get into the menopausal years, is hormonal changes and health changes. So, of course, if there is an illness, that is absolutely, understandably, 100% going to affect your sex life, and that you're not having sex because there's a chronic illness here or there's an acute illness. This is, unfortunately, I hate to say this is when autoimmune diseases can really come out. This is where cancer diagnoses start to be revealed, shown to us. We have them. When you broke your jaw in 2012, there was no way. I mean, it was like 2 months. There just was just no sex. And you were in so much pain with that broken jaw. There's just no way. And then when you were diagnosed with cancer and lymphoma in 2016, and you felt like such crap. You were on a really tough chemo. And I knew from working in oncology,
You're right.
I knew the chemo you were going to be taking. And I don't think I told you, but I knew, like, oh,
You knew the road was going to be
I knew the road
pretty
you were
bumpy.
going down.
Yeah.
More than bumpy.
Yeah.
I knew it. And so we are in survival mode. We are in crisis mode. The last thing on either one of our minds was sex. As you were in crisis, now you're thinking about it, trying to survive and beat this cancer and live through it. So no. That's when appropriately sex goes not even on the back burner. It's not even in the room. It's bye-bye for now.
Yeah.
We need to,
and justifiably so.
absolutely,
Right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
You feel
absolutely.
terrible.
Yeah.
So that is understandable. I'm not talking about that for this episode. I'm talking about hormonal changes in women and in men, because men's testosterone levels go down as you age, as it does in women, and estrogen and progesterone falls off a cliff for women who are in perimenopause and going into menopause. That absolutely affects your brain and how you think about sex and your libido. It absolutely is affecting your desire. You may not even be hugely attracted to one another anymore. Maybe physically there's been bodily changes, but you can still be attracted to each other because you love each other and you love each other's personality, or you like each other's personality. But that libido was like, no, I don't want to do this.
No go. Yeah.
It's not happening. And
Yeah.
that's because of hormonal changes.
Yeah.
You just have lower sex drive and lower sexual desire. So we hear it mostly in women. It does happen in men too. All right. So, if you're also dealing with hormonal changes, health changes, mental health, if you now are dealing with the depression, you've got new anxiety in your life, that really is going to affect your interest in intimacy or in sex. If you're dealing with the depression, I think mostly a mood disorder of any type, bipolar, when you're manic, yeah, you want to have sex all the time. When you're depressed, even in a bipolar, it's just not on your mind. You can't even allow yourself to entertain the possibility of pleasure because you're so depressed. You're like,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't really
Those
care.
two things don't
Right.
go the same direction.
And you deserve to
Yeah.
not feel that way. So know that mental health issues in your life, if that's what's coming up for you now, that can affect your sexual libido, and that's okay. It's okay, and that is understandable. Do you want to do something about it is the question.
Right. Good stuff. I like it.
And the last one is that as we grow older and we change as people, I think that something that we never think about when we partner up, whether we get married or we go into a partnership in our maybe early, mid, late 20s or 30s. Some people it is your mid 30s, 40s. We don't realize that we are going to change, because this is what I hear. And many of you who are listening and watching, you know this too, either in your own lives or the lives of those around you. He's not the person I married. She's not the person I married. Well, yeah, we are not the people that you married. We've all changed. So our identities change, and the big challenge And I throw this out to everyone. The challenge for you is to learn how to work together through your changing identities over the years. Because at 40, you're not the person you were at 20. I am not the person I was as a teenager. There's a lot of that silly, funny humor that will always be in me because that's core foundational to my personality. But there's so much about me today. I'm not who I was when I was 18. I'm not even who I was when I was 30. I've changed since I was 40. We are changing,
Right.
right?
And I think so when we started this conversation, we talked about like people in life, like later on, they start to think about their partner as like a roommate or,
Right.
whatever. But in this particular case, like your partner is like you're a partner in life. Like you need to talk about all that stuff.
Right.
You're managing life together. That's your function. And so in a way that should be your partner. It should
So
be
we're gonna talk more about that in
Yeah.
the next episode
Yeah,
about
yeah.
what to do, because it's a problem for so many people, because it's like I don't know them anymore. And the real problem is when you say I don't know them and I don't like them,
Yeah.
that there's some red flags there.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into that a little bit more in part 2 of this. So I'm going to go through it quickly again for all of you. So the email to me was, I know myself and many people that have been married a long time, and we are no longer attracted to our partners and our spouses. What are the reasons for this? All right. So let's go through it. Loss of novelty. The novelty has worn off. You've got life stresses and life responsibilities that have really, your sex life has taken a hit because of the stress in your life. You've got unresolved emotional issues that have built up over time with each other. There are ways in which you have not felt seen and heard. There are resentments that are just, maybe we've tried to bury them, make them go away, but we have not talked some things through. So here comes these unresolved issues. That's going to affect why you're not having sex. I think we just become complacent in our relationships and we stop making an effort. There are hormonal and health changes that occur. We talked about the caveat that a cancer diagnosis, a real serious health diagnosis, an accident like a broken jaw in a car accident, or something happens, of course, sex goes to the wayside. But I think it's really mental health changes and mental health diagnosis that can affect one's sex life, and hormonal changes. Menopause in women and andropause in men, which is low testosterone, really does affect one's desire for sex and having sex. And then just changing over time. And we say, I don't know you anymore. You're not who I married when I was 30. Okay. So yeah, we do change. So next episode, it's going to be up next week. How do you deal with this? What would I
What to
recommend
do.
you do? What to
Yeah,
do?
what to do.
Okay.
I like that. I'm looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah. Well,
What
you're
to
having
do.
it with me.
Excellent.
Okay. All right, everyone. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast with 5 stars. And if you want to work with me, reach out to me. hello@annamarcolene.com. Come talk to me. All right. Mad love.